Hi everyone, thank you for joining early token online event. Please meet Nadia Nesterova.
Hello everybody. Today we met for a brief discussion with our club of startup leaders on the impact of COVID-19 on the global tech. And we have a panel discussion to cover all the topics which entrepreneurs face today in the current environment of the pandemic developing across all over the world. And I will introduce you speakers today with my co-moderator, Gianpaolo Parigi. He is a venture capitalist and chairman of a single family office. And among our speakers is Wolfgang Gansich, president of the Uber Cloud, Leon Eisen, founder and CEO of Oxton, Andrew Ackerman, managing director of Dreamit, and Harrison Tyner, owner and board member of WeCounsel Solutions and business development of Haven Connect. Also, Pranay Gupta, co-founder of 91 Springboard, Drio Tamir, co-founder and CEO of Hargol Food Tech, and James Bishop, chief strategy officer of Haven. So I will give a floor to each of the participants just to briefly introduce themselves on today's discussion. Before we start our discussion, please, Harrison Tyner, introduce yourself in a couple of words.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. Again, Harrison Tyner, based here in Austin, Texas. And I'm coming into the conversation today within the context of two companies. My current day job, Haven Connect, is a real estate software company that focuses on automating processes, specifically in the affordable housing space. Second, I am the founder and current board member of WeCounsel Solutions, which is an enterprise telemedicine software platform that enables remote care delivery.
Thank you so much, Harrison. And I give the floor to Leon Eisen.
Hi, everybody. My name is Leon Eisen. I am founder and CEO at Occiton Medical. I'm inventor of the world's first FDA-cleared pulse oximetry monitor at wrist that doesn't allow using fingertip sensor like all we get used to. And we created company in 2010. In 2017, we received FDA clearance for world's first monitor. We created all platform, we call it digital continuous care platform, and around patient continuous monitoring and continuous care. And actually this platform was designed specifically for patients at fibrosis, specifically for COPD patients. And then COVID-19 appeared. Our platform, without any changes, without any specific adaptation, applied exactly to monitor and screen patients with fibrosis. And fibrosis is caused by COVID-19. So we are very busy today and demand just boosted, and we're working 24 to deliver our product.
Thank you so much, Anzen. And we pass the floor to Andrew Ackerman.
Thank you. So my name is Andrew Ackerman. I'm managing director at Dreamit. Dreamit invests in 3 different verticals. One, we actually also invest in health tech. So we have a bunch of companies that are either very much in the situation where we just heard, where they're greatly in demand, and the rest of them have zero ability to get through to hospitals for the next 6 months. It's kind of feast or famine for our health tech guys. We also invest in secure tech, so physical and cybersecurity solutions. And lastly, we invest in urban tech. That's the program I run, which includes prop tech, real estate tech, depending on how you want to refer to it, as well as construction tech.
Perfect, Andrew, thank you. And I pass the floor to Wolfgang Gansich.
Hello, this is Wolfgang, and I'm the co-founder and president of Uber Cloud. This is a new cloud service for cloud with one click. as we call it, and this is for engineering and scientific workloads. I will explain that a little bit later in more detail, but basically we provide a secure, on-demand, browser-based, self-service computing platform for engineers and scientists and their very complex simulation workflows. The company has been founded like 6 years ago in Sunnyvale, and we have employees in the US, in Europe, and in a few other countries. Our major focus is on manufacturing, life sciences, oil and gas, financial industry, and as I said, all the simulations which are done there to develop products or to push forward very complex research. We have customers in US, Europe, and Australia, and the market we are in is called high-performance computing market, and it's a $50 billion market, which is now successively moving to the cloud. And because of COVID-19, we already see that this moving to the cloud is really accelerated for very good reasons, and we'll get back to that, definitely. We are in pre-funding since 2018 and are now preparing for round A for those who are interested in the investment side of our company. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Volga. And I give the floor to Pranay Gupta.
Thank you for having me here. I'm here from India. Three things that I think got me here, and I'm super excited about it. First, I'm one of the co-founders of 91 Springboard. We're the biggest co-working space company, homegrown in India, and we have 26 hubs here across almost all the major cities of India. On the other side, we are also, as a company, doing seed investments. Typically, these are in early stage startups, early prototype, post-prototype, and early revenue startups. And then thirdly, while India has been in lockdown and all of us are dealing with COVID issues, me and my team, we've also set up a portal called startupsversuscovid.com, which is fundamentally driven towards ensuring that the information that startups need to succeed and to be able to deal with the challenges of COVID, especially for the companies which are solving COVID issues, they can get all of that together. So we are connecting them to investors, helping them with the government, and working towards that. Thank you.
That's perfect. Thank you so much. And I pass the floor to Dreher Tamir.
Shalom, everyone from Israel. My name is Dreher Tamir. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Hardle Foodtech, and we are the first in the world to grow grasshoppers on commercial scale. And if you did not know that, I'll just let you know that grasshoppers are nature's most efficient protein source. They are healthier for humans and more sustainable to grow.
Thank you, Dreher. And I pass the floor to James Bishop.
Hi, everybody. I'm James Bishop. I'm with Haven Global. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer. And Haven Global is an over-the-counter trading platform that addresses problems within the crypto asset class, which is currently exceeding $280 billion in capital that's actively managed and held by investors around the world. And we've addressed three problems: the lack of a regulated platform, weak compliance requirements, and then the absence of robust security standards by virtue of a six-phase program that includes regulation of our platform, principal approval from the Abu Dhabi global market, robust compliance program at a banking level, KYC, KYT, and AML standards. We have deep liquidity for our customers. We've got the ability for regulatory expansion in Switzerland, London, Hong Kong by the end of 2019. We are transparent with our pricing. There's no hidden fees or spreads, and we do not act as a market maker. And then over all of that is a bank-grade security, partnerships with global leaders, and and B2Go and enterprise security solutions are what we're able to provide that through. And last but not least, we've got a team of veteran security and technology industry team members. And currently right now, we've got roughly, we have roughly 32 customers using our platform. We've got $95,000 in revenue. We've done 100 BTC over-the-counter trades since November of 2019, and then more than 1,500 BTCs transacted thus far on the platform. And really excited to talk to you all about this today.
Thank you so much, James. And I finally pass the floor to Gianpaolo Parigi, my co-moderator today. Gianpaolo.
Thank you very much, Nadezhda. Thank you, gentlemen, for the introductions. And I have a question for whoever wants to answer. What do you use to motivate your teams in this moment to face the new challenge? I mean, what is the angle of attack that you're utilizing in terms of the teams that you have on research and the teams you have on marketing primarily? I would like to hear from you, gentlemen, if there is any new discoveries that you have done in the last weeks under the coronavirus. Thank you very much. I don't know who wants to take.
We're paying bonuses and face masks right now. No, sorry. It's funny, you're on mute. I can't hear you laugh. So no, I can't speak for the rest of the team, but I'll say
I'm laughing all right.
Most of the people that work at DreamIt are already motivated to do their best. We haven't had to do any kind of formal motivation, and ditto the startups that we're invested in. They're pretty self-motivated. If the prospect of like crashing and burning and running out of money isn't motivation enough, the thing that we focused on a little bit more is more on morale, more on kind of fostering a sense of community so people know that they're not in it alone. And that is not super insightful, but we've done things like virtual happy hours. And we've also rushed and put together, directly actionable content. So in the US, for instance, we passed a very large stimulus package called the CARES Act. And tucked in it, there are things that might benefit startups. So we've been doing our best to get that information to them. That is our portfolio companies as the news breaks. But formal, like, bonus plans, not that.
So oh, sorry.
For us, I would say that the main thing for us was about keeping communication lines and even improving them. Two things that we identified among our employees were, first, uncertainty. They didn't know what's going on in the company, and they didn't know what's really going on around the country. What are the new regulations the government is imposing? So we kept them informed on a daily basis, sometimes even several times a day. What are the official regulations coming from the government? And second thing, just give them a little bit more optimism, sharing them a little bit more optimism where the business is going.
Thank you, Drior. And I give the floor to James. Do you have a couple of words on that?
Yes, I do actually. Sorry, I was having a hard time getting my mute to come off. I think by virtue of why cryptocurrency and even blockchain was created, there's been a internal motivation within the market. I think for Haven and our employees, we've got an amazing team. And I think that from a work perspective, being able to work from home and focus on work has been a major plus for us. And then also, I think it's been a plus from us from an investor perspective. because again, I know at the top of the call or during our prep time, there was some discussion about disruption and it being too much of a used word these days. But coming from a venture background myself, where we invested in disruptive innovation, I do think that this virus is going to be very disruptive. And I think by virtue of its disruption, there will be disruption within the startup community and for entrepreneurs. So I think, you know, that collective disruption is going to be the precipice of a lot of innovation. And so I think it's been good for business. And I think it's created urgency. And it's an exciting time, I believe. And I don't look at it as doom and gloom. I look at it as an opportunity for people to collect their thoughts, find what's important to them, and then also to do some great things within their businesses as entrepreneurs and as employees.
Thank you, James.
Thank you. Yes.
I would like to try to represent, this is Wolfgang, try to represent a group which is not so severely affected. I know there are many other large groups present in our community, but I'm speaking more for the engineers and scientists here in this role, who develop products, who do big research, and who use computers. And if they use the right technology, which I will explain a little bit later, we'll talk about software containers. But if they use the right tools, they are really able to do what they already do and what they are used to do in the office now at home, simply by connecting their laptop, desktop, to the cloud in a seamless way, as I said, with one click, and then continue to perform their product and research simulations. So they are basically usually self-motivated. They have their big project. They have their deadlines and goals for the next generation of products, and that's what drives them through self-motivation. So this is they have access to all the tools they need while they are working in the office, working from home, working even in the airplane or on the road, etc. So I stop here for a moment because I want to go a little bit deeper with. I have 2 slides about what this really meant.
Yes. Okay. Maybe we'll give a word to Gianpaolo. He wanted to introduce some new question.
Yes. Well, I think I agree with your comments, all of you. And I think this is a moment in which I think there is a renewed sense of duty in stakeholders, shareholders, and employees and companies. I think, fortunately, for once, I see that long gone are the days of entitlement. I think that this crisis has evoked in everybody confined in the four walls of his or her own home, the harsh reality of how difficult it is to thrive even before thinking of other things, and then surviving as well. So I think it's a moment in which companies can rekindle, I think, the relationship between founders, employers, and employees to a level that is unprecedented in recent years. And I think at the end of this exercise, I'm very optimistic. I think it's a moment of change, of dramatic change. It's a moment where people are focusing more than ever before, and they are infusing, I would say, a content of their knowledge in what they do per unit of time worked that I hadn't seen throughout my entire careers of 3 decades. And probably, we have to go back to times in which there have been a war to really real words to maybe have some ideas of what really getting serious to do things really meant. And I think this is really good for the world. I know there are countries, Israel probably is more prepared than most of us to speak about that, because obviously having lived in a constant state of peril, obviously they are more alert than a lot of us as to what it means to may have to face a war day in and day out. But so for you, probably it's business as usual. And I think, for a lot of people in the West, I think it's good wake up call and smell the coffee type of alert, which is very good. And I think also in emerging markets, it's important that they adopt better standards, because, in the last 27, 28 days, according to research, about 92 billions fled the emerging markets. 92 billion of capital, so expatriates, fled because of perfect storm, and which affected, interest rates, central banks, and, of course, the coronavirus altogether. So basically, this capital is now repatriated primarily into the West, which is good for startup companies in the West on the short term. On the long term, we'll have to see how to redeploy part, if not all, of this capital towards the emerging markets where it initially belonged to. But I think also the growth of the technology companies in the Western Hemisphere maybe can create a condition for some of these companies, including yours, possibly, to expand also and to go to work in emerging markets and to redistribute capital as well in those countries that have lost it suddenly. Because the effect of this economic crisis, in the moment, it's about 50% wider and greater, the shock in emerging market than it is in developed economies. So I think when we take a look at this into the context of planet being one, and you're all global entrepreneurs, I think it gives an opportunity, a challenge, and also maybe a possibility to commit resources where they could go for the benefits of all. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Gianpaolo. And Harrison also wanted to comment on this point.
Yes, thank you. And I think bringing it back to the original question, if there's likely a lot of early stage founders out there with companies listening, if they're anything like the organizations that I have touch points with, I think a lot of employees today are pretty frazzled, anxious, and looking for direction more so than ever. And for us in the executive leadership team, how do you handle that? For us, it's open communication, having transparency, admitting that there's a real problem that we're going to have to work through together, and then talking about it together openly and candidly on a more regular basis, as far as how this is impacting folks personally, how we're going to deal with it professionally and as a business, has been really important for us. And in terms of how do we keep morale up, it's with that communication. We also make time for discussion around silver linings, both personally and professionally. So, what does that look like? I get to spend more time with family. All of our clients are actually sitting at home or are more available, so we can actually have some engagement with them to build some relationship capital there and help them in different ways. And I think more importantly, above all else, to the point earlier, I think this is a chance to rise to the occasion from a business standpoint and say, all right, how can we help? And not only ourselves, but our community and our stakeholders. One example is we put together a roundtable of all of our partners, industry leaders in the real estate space, just to talk about how they were responding to the another, but tactically at a company level, and then just thoughts around the industry at large. And that was immensely beneficial to them. And so it's just finding different ways to add value where you can and make an impact. So.
Thank you, Harrison.
Thank you, Harrison. Yes. Can we pass the floor also to Leon? He wanted to comment on this point.
Yeah, right. We are all at war, and very, very tough war with coronavirus to survive. And this war, like any other war, just revealed that our technology is just in infant stage. Do you see how many problems we have to communicate now? That's incredible. We spent a lot of money, $1 billion, and we have all these vibrations, problems with connections, and all this stuff. Do you understand how much we have to do? How big opportunities we have now? So I think we will get out from this war so strong, with so understanding what direction of our technology should go, independent whether this is medical technology that is definitely in very infant stage. All telemedicine is very infant. All cloud, everything is very, very far from what people really need to communicate from home. And I think also that I also can estimate the size of this opportunity. I mean that today, half of people in our world just working from home. They're eager to get back to job, but they already developed new habits, and they like it. Some people like it, and some people will get back. So if we have a curve now growing home monitoring or home work, then it goes back, and then it just somewhere in the middle stop. And this gap between what we had 2 months ago and what we will have after this outbreak will finish, this gap is our opportunity to change our world for better.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Leon. And I pass the floor to James.
Hi, I just wanted to add one more comment, and I echo Leon's feelings as well, that I think as entrepreneurs, we're, by our nature, extremely resilient. And I think as leaders in the entrepreneurial and business worlds, we have an amazing opportunity to act as examples. And, you know, when things get bad, there's always good. You know, in this case, it's given us time to connect with our families. It's given us time to connect with colleagues that maybe we hadn't spoken to in a while. It's given us time to connect with ourselves. It's given us time to connect with our employees. It's given us time to connect with our clients. It's given us time to come up with new ideas about how to develop our businesses and tweak our products to make them more receptive to the masses. And I think that, you know, this shouldn't be a time of doom and gloom. It should be a time of, there's opportunity. I mean, the stock market is back down to some relatively decent valuations, and there's a buying opportunity. There's a lot of opportunities that have come from this. And I think if we just remember that things are cyclical. The same thing happened during the financial crisis in September the 11th and other disasters at other times in the world history. And at the end of the day, opportunity always came from disasters. So I just think we need to remember that when we're sitting at home with our families and thinking about how bad things are by, you know, way of watching the news. And that's all I wanted to comment on. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And Andrew?
Sure. So a couple of things that I wanted to comment on. I'm going to pull together what we've been talking about. So I think the impact of the coronavirus, let me phrase it, I know the impact of the coronavirus is hitting the public markets, the venture market, and startups in very, very different ways. So in the public markets, it's like water in a thin baking pan. Like you tilt up one end, water sloshes to the other end. In the VC world, it's a lot stickier. right? So, our money is committed, right? We have limited partners who have committed to put money into the fund when we call it from them to make investments. So barring an absolute depression where they default on those commitments, venture funds still have money to invest. Now, we're taking a brief pause while we go through our current portfolio to understand what that impact is going to be on the startups we've invested in. But fairly soon, if history is any guide, we're still looking to invest. Now, the terms will be different and we'll be very picky, but we're going to be getting back to it. I mean, it's a very different impact than if you're a public company and you're looking at what's happening to your stock value, or if you're an emerging market seeing all the capital fleeing. Now, from the startups perspective, it's very, very different. And we've helped our startups think through this by having them think in terms of 3 topics or 3 slides if they're actually raising a bridge round. So number 1 is, will they still love you tomorrow, right? In that future world that Leon was describing, is that world better for them, worse for them, or basically the same? And we have startups falling in all 3 buckets, but most of them, the long-term prospects are as good, if not better. This virus may be accelerating the changes that matter to them, right? So resistance from working from home from employers is crumbling, right? Resistance to distance medicine, telemedicine, crumbling. Resistance to distance learning, gone. So in those industries, it's accelerated the change that was already happening, because you can't go back to say like, oh, I don't know how to do distance learning. Now you do. So those companies, the long-term prospect is good. The second part of how we help our startups think through, and our startups in general should be thinking through this crisis, is, okay, the future is equally good, if not better. How do I get there, right? Because the next couple of months, whether it's 4 months, 6 months, 12 months, are going to be brutal for most of them, right? So we've been talking through to them, how do you get to 12 months of runway in a, worst case scenario? And that's usually a combination of cutting costs aggressively or raising a bridge round, a little bit of both typically. For the companies that are raising a bridge round, I generally advise them, it's got to be from insiders. Like, now is not a great time to look for a new investor, get them sold on your company and have them invest. It's just unlikely. So most of them are going back to their insiders and current investors to raise money, and it's usually a down round. It just usually is. But they need to be realistic about it, and they need to move fast, because the ones who wait are less likely to get that. And then last, and certainly not least, is this crisis for some companies is an opportunity. There's lemons and lemonade here. Like, if you're working on anything health tech related that's directly relevant to COVID, you're doing deals on handshakes, virtual handshakes. If you're dealing with anything else in the healthcare industry, go away, don't talk to the hospital for 3 months. In prop tech, there's different things. So like, we have one company that is in the co-working space. It's not exactly co-working. They've shut down all their locations. They're getting 0 revenue for the foreseeable future. Right? In the long run, it's great. But what they've done in the interim is they've made their kit for how you turn a space into a co-working space available to a lot of the multifamily rentals, a lot of the apartment buildings, where now all of their residents are staying at home. All of them are trying to work at home in the same small apartment that their kids are trying to learn from. And they would give their right arm to be able to just go down 3 or 4 stories to the playroom that no one's allowed to use anymore because of COVID, and that can now be repurposed as a co-working space and just be able to work in peace for a few hours. So their response, their lemons to lemonade approach, is we're giving that away to free to multifamily operators who are not their traditional markets, as a way to help them through the crisis. So we're trying to have that conversation with all of our portfolio companies, how to navigate it. And it's, I think, a good framework for any startups that are listening now about how to deal with the next couple of months and year.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. And Pranay, could you address this question? How do you cope with this situation?
Definitely. But even before that, James, I'll call out a sentence you said, which was, when things go bad, it's always good. That will be on my next t-shirt. Coming back to answer your question. See, I don't want to sound as if we have the formula. I think I agree that it's a kind of war that none of us has seen before, right? And we are trying to do what we are doing, and honestly, we'll keep changing our strategy as the war progresses. But for now, I think I don't want to repeat what others have said, but one thing that we are definitely doing is we are cutting the fat. As a startup, especially as a company which has been growing very fast, you tend to build fat, start focusing on a lot of variety of things. You have these other experimental activities you're doing. And this war, first thing it's got you to do is focus back on the core, right? Thinking through that vision and mission and saying, what can I do to make my customers happy, and what are the core things that they still appreciate? And you just talked about a few things that his co-working-ish company is doing. In our case, a few things we're doing is we've doubled down our efforts to help our member companies grow. So trying to figure out how we can get them a lot of freebies, help them offset costs of various tools they're using, support them with knowledge and anything else they need to work from home to be able to do remote collaboration. We also have a lot of companies which are in the bracket where they're helping solve for COVID, and hence, in some sense, you may say the business is doing good. And in those cases, we are focusing a lot on how can we ensure there's no bottleneck for them, right? So something as simple as we have a company which sells the N95 masks, right? Now they have manufacturing spread all over India, and the logistics are becoming issues. So can we help them open that up, right? And so that's a variety of focus we are doing. The revenues, the co-working revenues have gone down to zero, but the idea is that if we can see through this period and we can continue doing right for our members, all of them will come back.
Okay, thank you so much. And Wolfgang, do you also have a case? How do your technology helps in traditional to shift the traditional businesses and to the new world? So how your technology helps in transition to manufacturing?
So thank you very much. One large area technology field has not yet been mentioned explicitly, which, however, and we all know that, will dramatically grow or continue to grow just after we are getting out of this disaster, which is cloud computing, right? In the enterprise space, clouds have been accepted already for many years, but in engineering and science, because of the complexity of the applications which have to be ported to the clouds, to the public clouds especially, like Microsoft, IBM, Google, Oracle, AWS, etc. So the growth here in high-performance computing cloud has been very slow. The acceptance has been very slow. Also for the long list of compliances the large companies have to follow, by the way, which are 30 plus years old already, so not really adjusted to the new times. That will come, by the way. Now, even this very conservative, or say traditional sector, you mentioned manufacturing, right? I mean, in Europe here, we have companies who are 150 years old, and they are big, and still most of them family owned, right? Very traditional companies. They have not yet really discovered the cloud for themselves. But what we see now is, especially because of this new great paradigm of working from home, you can easily access through your laptop, through your desktop. You can access the cloud and can get in touch with software as a service. So that's a new big thing, which will definitely be see a great acceleration after we got out of this mess. So it's getting fueled already. You can get like free credits for a shorter time for the next 2-3 months or so. You can also get free licenses from the big software vendors, like Dassault Systèmes, like Ansys, like Siemens. They are all now opening up programs for their customers so that they can test the cloud or even really use the cloud for their complex simulations. So, okay.
Yeah, thank you, Wolfgang. And we also have a comment from James.
I think I speak not necessarily just for our company Haven, but I think I speak also for the blockchain community and also cryptocurrency. Given that people are at home, given that there's a considerable reliance on digital transactions, whether it be paying for a delivery service to deliver your food, or paying your rent online, or whatever it may be that you have to do because you can't physically hand a check or cash to somebody. The importance of blockchain is becoming more and more real as time goes by. And I think that this virus and pandemic has caused people to realize that there needs to be a renewed focus on coming up with remote ways to conduct business. And after this pandemic is over, I suspect that there will be more startups that come out of the woodwork focused on these types of situations where maybe it might not be on a daily basis, but it may be on an emergency or case-by-case situation where they need to be able to access their money. And in terms of Haven specifically, I think that this pandemic has resulted in the need for liquidity. People want to go into cash right now. Two, it's resulted in people wanting to be diversified, whether it be investing in the stock market, in cash, gold, other natural assets, as well as into digital currency. Haven is able to do a lot of those things that other platforms are not able to do by virtue of all of the different reasons that I gave when I was first introducing myself and the company. And so I think, this pandemic has led to there being a considerable renewed focus on remote ways to conduct yourself, both with your friends and family, but also with your money and with your business.
Thank you, James. Thank you. And Drior also wanted to comment on that.
Yes, thank you. Many of the speakers address this crisis as war. And coming from Israel, I will tell you that to fight a war, you need an enemy that you can fight. And actually, most of you are not really fighting the enemy. The enemy, the virus, is not really your target. Your target is actually, you should look at it as a threat, maybe as a challenge. And once you have that threat and challenge, you also have opportunities. And the way I think we should look at it is actually look at those opportunities from the eyes of the world that is going to change. After this crisis, consumers, businesses, governments will not act the same. So specifically for Hardle, the way we look at the world will change, and we already see governments and businesses and consumers looking for better food that is healthier for them, food that is more sustainable, and we should use those opportunities and thrive instead of just trying to win a war.
Thank you so much, Drior. And
I would like to add some comments, Nadirna, and a question for our panel. Normally, we venture capitalists and entrepreneurs distance ourselves from governments, and Silicon Valley being the prime example for this. It wants to keep the government at bay. But in the face of what's going on in most markets, do you think that our central banks and the governments, for once, should intervene to really sustain businesses and it translate into practical effects for all of you, because you would all have a little bit more of a runway, that comes from the government this time? What do you think about this?
Yes, please comment. Who's ready?
I mean, I can talk a little bit about it. I mean, the real question in many ways is whether or not this is going to be a quick bounce back or not, right? So when you have kind of, they call it a V-shaped recession, a lot of the pent-up demand gets filled pretty quickly. So like the companies that service them, like they don't go out of business and they're ready to pick up steam pretty quickly. The big danger is what they call a U-shaped recession. Like the more prolonged it gets, the more companies cut into the muscle and the bone, and they can't come back right away. Once you've laid off people and shut down factories, it's a lot harder to come back up. And little things like the demand doesn't come back. So if I don't get a haircut for 2 months, I look pretty bad. I don't need 2 haircuts when I can. I just need the one. So some of that demand is lost forever the longer it goes on. So I think a lot of the response from the governments are to keep us in a position where when it's over, we can bounce back quickly, because otherwise it becomes a lot scarier. In the near term, I can only speak for this country, they've done their best to write checks, literally write checks to kind of lower income people. I think it's a couple of $1,000 depending on how much you earn. They're also doing what's called a payroll replacement loan, which becomes a grant where you can effectively, as a small business, by not, you get a loan through your bank, and if your payroll really hasn't changed much from what it was in the average previously, my understanding is it gets forgiven. So that's another attempt for, to keep companies going for the next couple of months, so that they're in place for, they're in place to bounce back when things start, hopefully getting back to normal.
Okay, thank you so much, Andrew. And James?
I'm not going to open up a can of worms and start the discussion about whether or not we should bail out the private sector. But what I will say is that I think government intervention during these times is really important. I have left the United States. I've been gone from the United States for almost 1.5 years now. I was in Puerto Rico, and then now I'm in Latin America. And the response to the coronavirus here in Latin America, I think has just been absolutely incredible for, what most of society considers as third world countries. They have really addressed this virus very well. The hospitals, both public and private, have taken this very seriously. The general public is taking this very seriously. And that's because of leadership in government. And I think crises like these just, in my mind, solidify the fact that we've got to have strong leadership in government. And also, I think on the private sector, we've also got to have strong leadership so that clients and employees and our investors feel secure in that there is leadership driving the company and making sure that it's able to weather these types of storms. But, generally speaking, I think government intervention is very important in these circumstances. And that's my comment.
Thank you so much. And Leon?
Yep, I think in a very, very dramatic shift of all measures and all metrics. And we cannot apply current metrics to the future, what will happen. I expect a huge problem with people's job. I expect a huge problem with supply chain. If compared to other wars, this war doesn't have any beneficiary. Usually we have beneficiary in the war. Somebody wins, somebody lose. Cannot be one beneficiary. So like after Second World War, America wouldn't able to help Europe, and Europe will not able to help America. So we all down, all of the world is down. It will be, I expect a huge inflation. I expect, again, a shortage of supply. And I think, expect a huge jobless. It happens today. For example, in Israel today, it's 21% of jobless. And United States, 6 million today, people without job. So it will not, it will be very, very, very big problem. And we don't know yet how to manage this.
Thank you, Leon. And Andrew, do you have a comment of how we cope with this situation? So if we have no losers and no winners.
Sorry, no, I can't really add anything to what Leon just said. It all depends on how long this lasts, right? If we recover relatively quickly, we bounce back. The real question is, how prolonged is it?
Okay, and we also have a comment from Pranay.
Yeah, on the government bit, honestly, I feel it's kind of unfair for all of us to think through government will come and pay a lot of our bills, right? I don't think that's possible. At the end of the day, their business in some sense will be as affected as ours. But I do feel engaging with government for entrepreneurs is very important, because this is a situation where a lot of market will be broken. And I think the government's best role is to ensure that it comes in, broadly defines what are the market policies. Also, like simple things like helping banks with the policy around allowing them to defer loans, right? To things like creating an infrastructure for goods movement to happen a lot more easily. So wherever markets are broken, working with the government to open those markets up or define some common policies is very important. But on the other side, if we expect government to come and subsidize all our cost, that definitely isn't happening.
Okay, thank you. And Harrison?
Yeah. So, and you know, I'm a capitalist, so where you can avoid intervention, you do it. But when the government, whether it's federally or state or county level, issues shelter-in-place orders that directly affect the viability of a business, whether that's a shop or a restaurant that's directly affected, that can't earn revenue. It should be expected that there's going to be some sort of effort to aid or bridge those, I would say, tier 1 impact industries that are going to be most impacted. And there's a stat in the US that's quite famous, where there's around 65% of Americans cannot afford a $500 emergency instance. So if they had some sort of surprise medical bill or something else came up, most of them couldn't foot that bill. And that's a pretty scary prospect. And what's happening right now in our country, and I think throughout the world, is exactly that. And it's hitting the industries where, where gig workers or service industry, where people are mostly living paycheck to paycheck. And so you've got to, ask yourself, without government intervention, what's going to happen to these people? And is the economic fallout going to be greater than the cost to actually bridge that? And do we want to wake up after this dust settles and we don't offer some sort of stimulus package to the directly affected industries like airlines, and have half the airlines kind of go under just because, we didn't offer adequate bridging in place at the right time? So, but you don't want to do it for everyone. You want to do it for the ones that are, I would call it the quote tier 1 directly impacted industries, and you know, make that analysis at the government level. So I think they're doing the right things, at least here in the United States.
Thank you, Harrison.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted for us to focus on our solutions to go. And Gianpaolo, maybe you'll have a couple of words on what would you advise our large audiences of entrepreneurs and VC capital firms so that they could take it as your expertise and advice in a couple of words. Thank you.
Well, that's a $1 trillion question, I think, you know, but we got to make the most of what we have. Resources available are always given in every company. So, of course, there's some cost cutting that can be, you know, propose a partial remedy to the situation. But, you know, cost cutting is not a great element to grow a company, particularly a startup. So I think, you know, it's very difficult in the moment to achieve a balance. I think that I see from my observatory as a venture capitalist and also as an investment banker raising capital for companies, is that I see there are still a lot of investors in the alternative space actually looking for deals, and they are actually even ready to commit on deals. And also some of the large lenders that I work with are, you know, doing business as usual. And again, I don't think this is a recession, but it can create the dynamics of a recession. And so we'll have to live with the consequences of a recession without having been all of us fall into a recession. We have countries like Germany that were entering the recession prior to the coronavirus, other that were out of it, other that were doing quite well, but all of us have been confronted with one thing. And I really agree with what Harrison was saying some minutes ago. This shows the inherent fragility of the capitalistic system that we created. And it's not perfect, we knew it. We think it's the best of what we could get, but Leon pointed out very well minutes ago again that we need to perfect our act, and there's a lot of room for improvement. So I think we have to work on that, because, you know, at the end of the day, a lot of things that we take for granted are to be reconsidered. We need to put more dollars or euros where our tongue is in terms of what we really need in terms of infrastructure, even in developed economies, because, you know, now we are working here around the virtual table thanks to a company which is called Zoom, that's of course enjoying now the favors of the market. But, you know, we see that there are days in which communications are not really good, even among very developed economies. So I think, you know, we have to pay more attention to what is really necessary in our world, healthcare, and the dealing with emergencies. I mean, Bill Gates, and I'm repeating myself because I said that a few days ago somewhere else, but, you know, Bill Gates and others have been already talking about that 5 years ago, 6 years ago, that we have to brace for emergencies like this, like we brace for war. Reality, we weren't, and we still are not prepared. So I think that now we start from ground zero, and let's see if capital goes towards the applications that will make our life more manageable and easier in a moment when the next crisis, whatever it is, God forbid, a nuclear meltdown, I mean, a tsunami, or a meteorite rain, or another coronavirus family type of outbreak, whatever that is, you know, it's a cause of force majeure. But, you know, the world definitely can be in a better state of preparedness, seen as all the capital and intellectual capital that we can deploy. So let's see if we can really steer markets, investors, stakeholders, governments towards where they need to put attention and capital on, because, you know, the possibilities are there to be obtained. You know, absolutely, it's not beyond us, and we could do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Gianpaolo. And Drior?
Yes, thank you. Well, of course, cutting costs is crucial. Also, trying to generate additional revenues or applying to government grants or just discussing with your existing or additional investors to raise more funds. However, I think the greatest risk for us as startups is actually a situation when one of the employees, a key employee, is being infected by the virus and not being able to work. So we have to be ready for such a situation, try to be ready for it and plan how you continue without your employees.
Thank you, Drior and Wolfgang.
Yeah, thank you, Nadia. I want to offer one solution how companies in my sector can become a little bit more independent of a crisis like this one. And I already mentioned the big platform in that context is the cloud. And if you allow me, I would like to share my screen for just 2 minutes. And let me check if that goes fast enough here. And so you're sharing your screen. Okay, thank you very much. And okay, Nadia, do you see my screen?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, wonderful. So in my sector, which is high performance computing, and I mean, all the companies who are producing something, they do modeling before that. They do design, modeling, simulation, and then they do the production. The same holds with big science, right? They do the very same. They rely on heavy metal, so to speak, and big computers. You see here in this slide, you see climate or the environment on the left-hand side, but also companies in oil and gas, more and more personalized healthcare. And obviously now, when you scroll or when you do a search on Google and you type in COVID-19, like research or computing, etc., you see a ton of brand new messages, brand new information about who is now jumping on simulating viruses and how they can be cured, caught, and this is very related to the right one, to the next one here, drug design, but also back to manufacturing, then turbo machinery, automotive, combustion, etc. So far, like at least 90% of the companies who are doing these kind of things, they are still relying on their own big computing system, or a ton of workstations to simulate these things on premise, right? But this is all CapEx, right? And with CapEx, you are not really flexible. CapEx gets old very quickly these days. And the solution here is really more moving as much as you can, as many as you can, things to OpEx, which is as a service. So you pay really for what you use. You can rent it. You can get it over the internet. You can get it from the cloud. And so that way also, which is highly actual now, again, when you type in work from home, it's amazing what solutions, especially the IT companies these days are coming up with, and which is really good. And those companies who benefit, and it's not a really nice word here, but who benefit from this crisis, they are getting out of the crisis and accelerate quite quickly. So work from home also includes work from everywhere, so to speak. And the basic fundament here is really the cloud. And in manufacturing, for example, how do you solve that so that you can take your very complex workflows from on-premise to the cloud is simply software containers. And let me just get to that one. No, 1 second, please. So, okay. So, so containers, this is not something new, but it's becoming really, really popular now. Basically started from by a company named Docker in San Francisco, and now especially accelerated by Kubernetes, which is an orchestration platform for all kinds of different computing resources and storage, et cetera, in the company and even on the big cloud platforms. And these containers, they have you see here, so this is a container, and these are complex workloads from different companies, Siemens, so system, et cetera. So they run everywhere, which is very nice. They run on-premise, they run in any cloud, and you can combine them on-prem, public, into a hybrid one. And these containers then they enable fully automated service on-demand enterprise cloud environments. The big companies are starting now. So the big three in Silicon Valley, for example, they are already using this technology, and quite a few others. Also, Europe is now coming, which, as I said before, is very traditional and in that sense a little bit slower. And so work from home benefits here based on or coming from these desktops. There's a ton of benefits. So if you'd like to know a little bit more, be so kind and contact me, because I know we don't have the time to discuss every point here on the right hand, but the benefits are really huge. And I really wanted to stimulate everybody's thought and to check if, again, in summary, CapEx could be moved to OpEx, like this way here. Okay, thank you. So I stop sharing.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your slides. And so we just introduced our final comments. Just one keyword which you would address in the current situation. What is the keyword of your association? What is on top of your mind? Just in one word for us to take it to go. Drior?
Sure, just stay healthy and eat healthy.
Thank you.
Be creative.
Thank you.
As in taking 2 words when she asked for one, James?
Okay. You're nice and confident.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Opportunity.
Okay, thank you. Fanya? Who else is
Gravity. I don't know. I can't do it in one word.
Okay.
Okay, I'll go next. Resilience.
Perspective.
Okay, another one could be hope. And if I have a second, then I would say cloud.
Thank you.
If it's only a little bad, cash. If it's really bad, bullets.
Okay. We have a choice. Okay, we still have more positive words than negative ones. So it thinks that our hearts are more opportunistic. Thank you very much for your discussion. It was great, and thank you for sharing. We had a nice investor panel and serial entrepreneurs in here today, and we'll have this recurrent comments and the current panels like this. So you're all welcome to send us your ideas and what other topics you would like to discuss, and we'll keep this for our further discussions with the leading entrepreneurs, and so that you could share it with our larger community, with our investors and entrepreneurs. So I think that during this time, it's vital to stay connected and to share our ideas and pains as united we stand, right?
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Yes,
Thank
bye.
you. Bye.